What is up, everyone? Welcome to a video that I've been so excited to do for such a long time. Way before we were moving, I was already thinking about this setup and thinking about the videos that I could make. Now, just before I get started, this video is going to be pretty rough. Firstly, I'm speaking a bit quietly in this first section because little man is asleep on the sofa there and he needs his nap, so I'm going to try not to wake him up while doing the first few stages of this. Secondly, this video is going to be really rough because I don't have a tripod with me, and IMNC HQ is still set up in my old house at the moment. If you guys have been keeping an eye on the vlog channel, hopefully Moving Vlog 2 has been uploaded by now, and you guys know the score, you know what's happening, and you've already seen a little bit of this setup. So if you head down in the video description, I highly recommend you check out the vlog channel if you haven't already, to keep up to date with my moving process and everything like that. But as for this video itself, it should be a little timeline over a few days, maybe a week at a push, where I get the basics of this setup. At least the equipment you see here, where I get it set up. Now, in terms of this first clip, I'm going to give you guys a little tour of everything that's here, and then we're going to set up the sort of this side of the setup. And I'll explain more about that later and why I'm not setting it all up today, etc. Because there are a lot of things that come into play here. But the basics of this setup include, of course, the centerpiece, which is our 80s TV stand, which I suppose a lot of people would hate, but we actually quite like it. It may or may not be painted the same colour as this ottoman to match the ottoman for a bit of continuity, and the same goes for this little DVD rack here. We may or may not paint that white because, as you guys can probably tell, we've got a lot of colour schemes going on in here at the moment. But you know, nothing's finalised. This is all rough. We've only been in about 4 or 5 days, so yeah, bear with me with all of this, folks. This is all going to be really rough. But yeah, we have our 80s TV stand, which I really do like. It's got such a cool look. I've done some modifications to it, but I covered that in the vlog. Basically, I've taken the backs out of both sides, and I've taken the shelf out of this side to allow consoles to be put there. Before, we couldn't put anything there bar DVDs and games, because you couldn't get any cables out or whatever. But as it stands at the moment, we have 2 consoles and 2 consoles, so 4 consoles. It's a brilliant use of space, and it saves on getting another shelving unit or something like that. Anyway, let's look at the centerpiece here. This is my Samsung TV. I can't remember the model number, but I do have a video on it. This is almost 10 years old now. I was given this TV by a friend for this move, so we've only just started using it, and I have to admit, I really love this TV. Now, it's a 720p 40-inch TV, and because of that, it's the best of both worlds for what we do, because we do watch Blu-ray, and we are going to be watching high definition streamed content, but the Apple TV that I'll be using is my parents' old one. At least at the moment, I think I will be. So that's a 2nd gen Apple TV, so that outputs 720p, so that's ideal. And of course, because this isn't a 1080p TV, with all of our retro systems, like the N64 and the GameCube, the N64 is the oldest system that's on this setup, the upscaling isn't as much to a 720p image, so it's going to look better. Plus, because this is an older TV, the analog scalers in the system, in the TV, are much higher quality than what you get in modern TVs, and some modern TVs don't even have any analog interfaces anymore. So I love this TV. Obviously it's a bit fat by today's standards, and some of you out there would, you know, turn your noses up at anything that isn't 1080p, but for us this is amazing. Biggest TV I've ever had in my life, and I'm loving it so far. The picture is absolutely brilliant. It needs a clean, the same goes for all of this stuff, but that's to come, guys, you know, all in good time. Anyway, that's the TV. Model numbers of everything will be in the video description. So below the TV we have Jess's side, that's Xbox 360 and PS2, they're her 2 main consoles. My side, we have Wii U and GameCube, they're 2 of my main consoles. This is just a DS that's sitting here for now. That's going to be where I keep my some Wii U stuff, maybe a hard drive or whatever, if I run out of space, but at least there's some spare space there. And then in the middle we have the PAL N64, which requires some modification. It needs a motherboard swap because I want to get S-video output. For those of you who don't know, any different color N64s will not output S-video. They'll only output composite and RF. So I'm going to do a motherboard swap with the standard grey console to get S-video, because S-video combined with SCART are the only two standard definition analog connections that I'll be using. Nothing on this setup will be composite, which is pretty sweet. Below we have the Samsung Blu-ray 3D home theater in a box style Blu-ray player with amplifier and all that stuff. That basically powers, obviously it's our Blu-ray player, but it also powers this center channel, the 4 tall column speakers in the corners, and that little passive subwoofer down there. Now, yes, folks, I am doing yet another AV setup without an AV receiver. So take that for what you will, but you will notice that this setup is going to be a lot cleaner than previous setups. And I am avoiding purchasing an AV receiver yet again. Now, in terms of this Samsung home theater in a box kit, Jess and I both absolutely love the sound from it, and the Blu-ray functionality is top notch. So I have no real need to upgrade to a home theater receiver, an AV receiver, apart from connections and connectability and flexibility of routing of audio and video. But I'll explain more about that as we go along. So that's basically everything in this area, and that's what we're going to be setting up today, really. This video is going to be pretty long, I think, but today we're just going to be focusing on getting the TV up and running, as well as the surround sound, the Wii U and the Xbox 360 all working with a HDMI switch and all the audio working. That's pretty much what I'm going to do today, and then throughout the week we will gradually build up the setup. Now, a couple more points. I will quickly go through everything else right now so that you guys are aware of everything we have. With this rack over here, we have N64 number 2. This is my Japanese N64, which is awesome. That also needs a modification to allow me to play US games. I'll do that around the same time as I mod this N64. It's not a pressing issue at the moment. Next up, we have a little piece of kit that I am not going to talk about fully until I make a dedicated video about it. This is my gorgeous, fully restored by an ex-Sanyo engineer, Sanyo VTC 6500 Betamax VCR. This is a tank of a machine. I've always wanted one. I absolutely love it. Next up, we have my VHS VCR, and we have this little beauty that I made a video on recently. This is going to be the number 2 sound system. So we've got the Samsung home theater in a box system, which we're going to be using for all of our sort of modern stuff. So that will be obviously the Blu-ray, the Xbox, the PlayStation 2, the GameCube, the Wii U. Anything that this guy really well and truly understands will go through, you know, the Apple TV, anything like that will handle through the modern system. But we'll also be using a secondary system with the 2 N64s and, of course, the VHS machine here. And that is this little Dolby surround setup. I've got a dedicated video on this. There's a link to that in the video description. You guys will love it if you're into your older surround setups. So that is a surround sound processor for the older Dolby stereo, or in consumer terms, Dolby surround setup. That's the processor with built-in rear channel amplifiers. And up here we have the dedicated amplifier for the Technics SB3030 speakers from 1983. These are a gorgeous pair of speakers that will be here primarily for my hi-fi setup, which is basically just the turntable. And also they'll be used as the front speakers for the surround setup, using this amp as well, obviously. The only thing that I don't have for this setup yet is a center channel, which is optional anyway. I'm not sure if I'm going to invest in a center channel for that setup, because just with one button on the processor you can route center at 3 dB louder to right and left, which is awesome. But what I will add very soon is rear speakers. They are to be confirmed. I don't know what rear speakers I'm going to be using for that setup. You may be thinking, why the heck are you having 2 surround setups? Well, personally, I think it's going to be really cool, and also this is true hardware that understands the signal coming from this guy and coming from the N64s. I'll be able to play games like Donkey Kong 64 and watch my VHS tapes in true Dolby surround, which for those of you who don't know is basically right, left, center if you've got one, or I just explained that, and a single surround channel. Both left and right surround are just one channel. So yeah, again, to you people that are really accustomed to modern ultra cool setups, that probably sounds a bit balmy, but yeah, that's about it. So we have 10 minutes used up already, so I better get to this setup. You can see the TV is actually powered on. All we've been doing is using the TV to watch TV. I used the existing antenna cable that was here. But yeah, we are going to set up some of the more modern stuff today. So at the moment, everything's everywhere. But hopefully I'll gather everything together and get some organisation going. Little man just woke up after I finished that last clip, so I can talk at full volume now, which is good. So one thing I'm going to start with is explaining power. Now, here I have a bog standard 6-way surge protected extension lead with like a 1 meter trail cable on it. And yeah, this is what I'm going to use for all of my digital devices. Now, if you've watched the vlog, I'll be repeating myself again, but I've got to go over it in this video because this is what this video is all about. Now, putting this down for a second, at the moment the TV is plugged into a very, very special type of extension lead, which is a lot bigger in size. You can see this funny little window here with coils and stuff. That is actually an extension lead made by a company called Tacima, and I'll leave a link to it in the video description. It's a fantastic extension lead to use for mains isolation for audio equipment. Now, the only reason I'm using it at the moment for the TV is because that's the extension lead that I had out. I dragged it out of my setup in the old house. So I'm going to be running 2 of those Tacimas and 1 normal extension lead. Here's the normal extension lead. Now, you may be thinking, what is the difference between those 3 and why am I running them? Well, the first one is really easy to understand. Here we have a rack of analog equipment. So all of this stuff relies on analog. I'm mainly focusing on audio here for a second. Analog audio output. So this is quite simple. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now the turntable is debatable because technically the electricity just turns the turntable. You know, it goes into a preamplifier in my amplifier. But still, there's 6 devices here. That will be powered by 1 Tacima extension lead, which is, as I just explained, an isolating power supply for those pieces of equipment, which will provide good audio quality with no hiss. So here is a brand new one that I have bought. As you guys can see, there it is. Tacima mains conditioner. These are fantastic, really, really good. Worth their weight in gold. You can actually hear the difference. So that is dedicated to that setup. But as you guys know, we won't be doing that today. But we'll be doing it in the next part of the video. So yeah, whatever. The second Tacima supply gets a little bit more confusing because after we've looked at all that analog equipment, we go into what I'm calling a sort of hybrid domain at the moment. Now, there are certain things that I'm going to power off the conditioned circuit and certain things that I'm going to power off of the non-conditioned circuit. Now, the easiest way to understand this is on the non-conditioned circuit, we're going to have everything that just processes zeros and ones. So everything that's purely digital. That pretty much includes the HDMI switch, the Apple TV, because of course the HDMI switch and Apple TV are HDMI, so pure zeros and ones going through all of that. Hang on a second, I've just literally forgotten the other. Oh yes, Xbox 360 and Wii U, obviously, so that's 4 sockets taken up on here. And reason those go on there is because they're HDMI devices as well. So just zeros and ones going out of those, so you know, no conditioning needed. And yeah, a couple of other bits and bobs that I can't remember off the top of my head. So everything left is going on the conditioned supply back there. That includes the TV, because although the TV is primarily a digital device, I'm using it as my home theatre receiver. I'm putting all of my analog connections into it and also getting analog audio out of it for this setup, this secondary surround setup. So that needs conditioning 100%. This Samsung home theatre in a box, although it's a digital device, it's got HDMI and everything, it's got an amplifier in it for all these speakers, and it's going to be conditioned, because it's going to be conditioned for the same reason as this lot's going to be conditioned. And then things like the PS2 and this N64, that's fairly obvious, and the GameCube, they all output analog audio through RCA, so yeah, they're going to be conditioned as well. So it's actually pretty easy to understand, as well as I will be ordering an active remote control S-video switch, sorry, and that'll be powered from, at least I think it needs mains power. It must do, because I think it's an active device. I'll check on that later. That'll also be powered from the conditioner. So after explaining that, like, really in a rubbish way, hopefully you guys understand the 3 circuits that are happening. So the circuit over there, there's a socket back here that will power that circuit, as you guys can see. There's a spare socket there, so that'll probably be used for the lamp or something like that. And then we have 2 sockets here, and these will be used, you know, you can switch them on and off all night, every night or every day or whatever. And that'll mean that standby power won't be used, because obviously saving money is a good factor here as well. But we do have the first hurdle that is not allowing me to set up this full setup today, and that is the complete wild approach to socket placement in this property. As you guys can see, the socket is right against the skirting board, and the skirting board actually protrudes out below the socket, meaning that a standard plug, unless it's a transformer that's a specific shape, it will not plug into that socket. That's ridiculous. As you can see here, we have one plug plugged into this socket, but you can't get a plug into that socket very easily. And look, this one isn't even in all the way. So we're going to do some modifications to the skirting board, but that isn't going to happen yet. So one of the primary reasons that I can't set up this setup to my full potential yet is because I can't plug anything into the damn sockets. And I want those circuits. There's no point setting it up in a half-assed way, daisy chaining extension leads. That defeats the whole object of doing a nice setup. So there's that. The other thing is I don't have all of the cabling that I need yet, including the S-video switch. But let's get on to digging out a few more things to show you guys that are going to go into this first part of the setup. So this is the HDMI switch that I've chosen, and it's a basic unit from Amazon that had decent reviews. The main reason why I chose it is because it's metal and has good build quality, and it also has manual remote control switching. The previous HDMI switch that we were using was an auto switch. It did have an overwrite button on it, but the auto switching was fairly unreliable, and it also had no remote. So here we have a much nicer looking unit, which has got nice rubber feet on the bottom, one of which I just accidentally pulled off slightly, which is a shame. But yeah, I don't like the way that there's cabling on the side. I think that looks pretty disgusting, so we're going to try and hide this somewhere. I wish it was all on the back, but you can't have everything, I suppose. So I was initially going to have this switch just sitting there nicely, and as you can see, it doesn't look too bad at all. But then I learned that there were cables coming out of the side, so I'd rather try and hide it somewhere if I can. I have no idea where yet, but hopefully somewhere. So we have that little doohickey, and obviously that comes with its power supply, etc. Next up, we have something that I wanted to use for this setup, and that is Velcro cable ties. Reason I want to use Velcro is because I explained the potential possibility that this unit could be painted. The setup is going to be complex in terms of the amount of wiring we have, but it has got to be removable quickly and effectively, because we could want to pull out that unit and paint it or whatever. Plus, Velcro is less permanent than normal cable ties. It's less of a waste, and it might be a little easier to manage. But this is my first ever time setting up a nicely cable managed any sort of setup with Velcro cable ties, so I really hope it works out. Next up, we have all of the speaker cabling for the home theatre in a box system, which needs sorting and running, but hopefully all of that will be fairly straightforward. I hope it's not too knotted up. I probably just made it a lot worse. But yeah, and here in this little box we have a LED kit. One of these LED kits that comes with 4 strips. The plan is to put 1 strip along the back of each surround speaker. As you guys know, they're sort of column speakers. So 1 behind that speaker, 1 behind that speaker, 1 there and 1 there. And I do have extension cables that I ordered for them specifically. Whether they'll reach or not, who knows, but hopefully they do. So there are all sorts of things left here that we are going to be using today, such as power supplies for the consoles, etc. And there are all sorts of things that we aren't going to be using today, such as analog cables. That was a HDMI cable, but like analog cables, as you guys can see, I've got all my wait, what is this? Yeah, this is an S-video cable for an N64. There are just all sorts of things in here that'll sit here. One thing that I did get that I'll mention really quickly, I got this for the Betamax and VHS VCRs. This is a proper Hama or whatever. Any of those cheap rip-off SCART switches that you guys see in pound shops or whatever, the horrible plasticky ones that do an awful job of SCART switching, this is the switch that they're all based off. This is the 30 quid monster that supports RGB and proper isolation. So although it looks like a cheap NAF product that you'd find in Hypervalue or whatever, this is the real deal here. I do actually have 2 of them, because prior to getting an S-video switch, which I still haven't ordered, I've recently found it, I thought I was just going to be SCART switching. That's also why I have all of these S-video to SCART adapters. So as you can see, S-video to SCART, but now I'm actually using S-video without adaptation to SCART for a few different reasons as well. That'll also be a remote control splitter. It sounds really complicated now, guys, but once it's all set up, you guys will see that it'll be surprisingly clean. Yeah, I also have this other box, and in here I have a little plug thing that I'm hoping will maybe extend one of the plugs out enough to allow me to plug a plug into it, but we will see. Also loads more cabling in here. Yeah, it's all just, you know what moving is like, guys, it's crazy. So first step, let's pull this out and get that guy out of its packet and sort out HDMI and power and everything behind the TV stand itself. So this is behind the TV stand. Luckily it's on wheels, so it makes things really easy. Now, one thing about this stand is this is actually a sliding drawer that gets pulled out, which I really like for the N64. So when I wire up my speakers, which is the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure that the this is like there's enough play in the speaker cable to pull them in and out. But yeah, I'm just going to find a Toslink cable, because we'll be feeding this with Toslink from the TV. That way, anything that's plugged into the TV will be recognised by this, which is the main way I get past using an AV receiver. So the TV has all of the inputs that I want, then output via Toslink to that, and then output via left and right RCA to the other surround processor, because as you guys know, with Dolby surround, it's just a stereo matrix. This is just a stereo matrix soundtrack, so all you need is left and right feed to that, but that'll come at a later date. First off, we've got to try and make things a little bit tidy back here. We're not going to do any dusting and cleaning today. That'll come later, or maybe I'll give it a quick dust. I didn't know it was that bad. But yes, here we go. I'm going to make a start, and unfortunately there's going to be no cool time-lapsing or anything, because I don't have a tripod, but bear with me, folks. We'll get up and running here eventually. So I've used 2 brand new HDMI cables that I ordered. I actually ordered about 5 or 6 ages and ages ago, but I've been using them gradually in various places, so they'll show up in boxes along the way when I unpack, I suppose. And probably loads of them are still up IMNC HQ Mark 1. But yeah, as I've been using these HDMI cables, they're a great little length, not too long with loads of bunched up cable space, because like, for instance, this HDMI is much too long to try and make it neat. But one thing that I've been noticing, or one thing that I've noticed rather, is an extreme annoyance with this little splitter. And it's a 3-sided device in terms of connections, which is bleh, especially with a connector that bulky. You know, you can't bend that cable until at least there without it being, I mean, even that is sketchy. But this is what frustrates me. The output is on this side, whereas the HDMI connector on this side is an input number 5. So why, if they could only fit 4 inputs on the back, right? Why not put input number 5 on this side, so that if you don't need 5 inputs, you can at least have your output here and your power connected here, so that you don't need anything plugged in the other side. But as it stands, even if you only have 2 devices connected to this thing, you need to have all 3 sides occupied. Or even if you have one device connected. Right now, I've just got the Blu-ray player, and once I get the power adapter out of the box and plug it in, that's all 3 sides of this splitter utilised. So I'm going to leave an Amazon review for it once I've used it for a bit, and obviously I'm going to be honest about functionality, etc. But I'm going to say how it's inconvenient that cables are spewing out of that thing left, right and centre. I'd rather it be twice the size and have all the connectors in the back. Anyway, I'm not going to rant about that for much longer. I got a feeling that it's just going to fit on the floor underneath the stand, to be perfectly honest. But yes, I'm going to continue on with this. So that is everything bar speaker cables for now connected. So I just need to tidy it all up. Basically, we have one free port on the back of the HDMI switch. That's where the Apple TV is going to go. So Blu-ray player, Apple TV, Wii U, Xbox 360, job done. HDMI output on the side. It's got power and it's going to sit under there. You'll see what that looks like later on. Then we have at the back, non-conditioned Wii U, Xbox, HDMI switch, conditioned, surround sound and TV. All of this will be labelled and tidied up very soon. I managed to squeeze that in. That is not great, but it'll do for now, just about. So I'm going to tidy all this up with Velcro and then make a start on speaker wiring, and we'll be nearly done for this little segment. Velcro tie around this whole bundle so there's no strain on any of the cables. It'll just slip under there and just show up under the shelf for now. I've also sorted the cables coming from the back of the TV. There'll be far more, but that's just what they are for now. Just coming down there, just got a little bit more power cabling to sort. I'm not going to do loads here because it's going to be drastically changed once I introduce some more equipment, but I'm going to try and make it look as good as possible. First I'm going to tackle all those Xbox leads. That's how we're looking before wiring speakers up, guys. That's as good as it's going to get for now, at least before I add any more cabling for the rest of the equipment. I'm pretty pleased with that. I think it looks great. It's all going to be behind the cabinet anyway. Right then, time to wire speakers. So all the speaker cables themselves are connected. As you guys can see, I've made this little snake here, which is looking quite neat. That'll mean that I can pull the tray in and out without worrying that I'm going to pull any cables out. So this is pretty much ready to push back. I'll then tidy these cables once it is pushed back. And I've still got to connect the rear too, but yeah, that is pretty much the hardest part done right there. So that's the first bit done. There's been a bit of a development. For some strange reason, one of the HDMI leads, which I've actually just thrown in here accidentally, one of the brand new ones, isn't working. I thought it was a problem with the switch, first of all, but then I tried it just straight from my Wii U to the TV, straight from the 360 to the TV, and nothing. It just wouldn't work. It was really strange. So at the moment, I've got the Xbox and Blu-ray going through the switch, and no Wii U, because I don't have another HDMI down here, but I'm going up to IMNC HQ Mark 1 tomorrow to edit some videos, so I can grab it then. So this is the basics of the setup. We have the sound up. One thing I haven't done, because of the whole HDMI thing, I haven't tidied up the cables at the back very well, but they're actually way better than I was expecting. Another thing that I need to get is a little bit of coax extension to stop this white aerial lead just looking terrible there. I've got loads of that at home, so I can grab some of that. And then of course this is just cable mess from the turntable and things like that, which will all be hidden in the cable management duct back there when this is sorted out. But for now, this is great. We're up and running with at least a 360 and Blu-ray player, and the Wii U's powered up so I can play on the gamepad if I want to. So all in all, pretty pleased. Rear speakers are plugged in, cables aren't 100% tidy yet, but as I say, cabling will come. So for day one, I'm pretty pleased with how this has worked out, and it's working well. So, it's day 2 working on this living room AV setup. It's actually been a few days since I filmed day 1. I was waiting for some Amazon deliveries. I still haven't received everything, but I've received enough to do a little bit of work on this today, or quite a bit of work. We're mainly going to be focusing on the retro rack today, and mainly the audio portion of it. But we'll see how far we get. So I think I'll start off by showing you guys exactly what I've received today from Amazon. And, well, various places. Firstly, I decided to take the plunge and buy all new phono cables for this setup. The primary reason is I want to try and get quality where I don't have to spend too much money. Now, all of my existing phono cables are just random, cheap, I've gathered up over the years terrible cables, and I thought I may as well treat myself to getting some relatively decent-ish phono cables. You know, these are by no means audiophile, you know, top high quality awesome grade cables, but they're just a little bit better than your bog standard ones, and they also look a little bit nicer and they'll be easier to manage. So altogether we have this long one, which I believe is 5 meters. This is to connect the TV, the output of the TV, to the surround sound processor. That's for the second surround setup, which hopefully everyone is following by now. I'm not sure how clearly I explained it all in the first part of the video, but yeah, this is the main connection between the TV and the retro surround setup. So that's that. Next up we have a 3 meter one. That's to connect the audio output of the S-video switch to the TV. So I wanted to get a little bit of a longer one just because I'm not too sure where I'll be putting the switch yet, because the unit is a little bit bigger than I thought it was going to be. Plus it needs to be where the two N64s will be able to reach it with their S-video cables. Now we won't be wiring up the switch today, I don't think, because I haven't received delivery of my S-video cable yet, but that's okay. We can work on that in the next part, in day 3 or whatever. And then next up we have 3 1 meter cables. I know we'll definitely be using one of them today, but I'm not 100% sure on the rest. The one that we'll be using today will be to connect the output of the surround sound processor to the amplifier for the front speakers, and then the other 2 are just spare, or maybe one of them is spare. To be perfectly honest, I figured all this out, but I can't actually remember what they're all for at the moment. So we'll just figure it out as we go along. But yeah, they're all my brand new phono cables. Really looking forward to using those. I've been using cheap, tacky ones for a very long time. It's not going to make any noticeable difference to the audio. It'll just make me feel a little bit better. So moving on, I have treated myself again. It's not really a treat. This was about 7 or 8 quid. This is 25 meters of decent-ish quality, thick-ish speaker cable. Now, I'll explain why I've got 25 meters in a minute, but firstly, a little note on speaker cable. You can spend a lot of money on speaker cable, and I know that really good stuff makes a difference, but for me, in this setup, I would need to spend money on other areas way before spending, you know, multiple tens or even hundreds of pounds on speaker cables, and it's really not something that I want to do, especially considering the equipment that I'm using is not particularly high-end. In fact, it's just average equipment. It's really, really not up there with, you know, crazy awesome hi-fi grade stuff, but I like it. It's my gear and I enjoy it, and I think it sounds good for what it is. So I decided to go with decent speaker cable. So this versus the speaker cable that I've had, which was just, again, like the phono cables, random cable that I've collected over the years. At least this will be the same cable and a decent thickness all the way round. Now this is for connecting my Technics SB3030s to the main amplifier, but it's also to connect the output of the surround sound processor, which, as I did explain, I think I explained it anyway, it has an output for rear surround speakers, it has an amplifier for the rear speakers, so I'm using that speaker cable to go back to these bad boys. As you guys can see, this is an addition that I've made. They're not wired in or anything, so I didn't feel it necessary to record, but these are basically my rear speakers from my old surround setup. These are Eltax, I believe, Millennium Mini 2 speakers. They're small little bookshelf speakers, and they're quite nice. They're not the highest quality things in the world, but they are relatively nice. I bought them in a car boot sale about 6 years ago for £8 for the pair. I do have the front grills for them. They're really nice speakers. They're not like vintage or anything like that. They're just average speakers from the last 10 or 15 years or so. But they'll do great, and I do really like the look of them. Now, as for the stands are new, and you guys aren't going to believe this. I mentioned to my dad that I was looking for some speaker stands for my rear speakers, and I mentioned to him that the ones I was looking at online are about 20-30 quid. And then my dad phoned me, I believe it was yesterday he phoned me, and he was actually in a very large charity shop in one of the towns around here. And he said, oh, there's speaker stands here. They look really cool. They're nice quality. They're solid. They're metal. They're, you know, sturdy. And they're £1 each. I was like, that is awesome. Yeah, grab them. And it turns out they weren't £1 each. They were £1 for the pair. So check these out, guys. These speaker stands that have got little bits of foam and everything on them. They're total quality, lovely stands that could support speakers much bigger than these. They were £1 for the pair. Now, they are a little low for rear surround speakers, but honestly, for £1 a pair, they are fantastic. And what's really great is it kind of keeps the theme, because these Technics SB3030s are lower than these front speakers, so with the rear speakers lower as well. I mean, this is not anywhere near an exact science or anything. Don't follow what I do. This is not a tutorial video. Yeah, the retro surround sound setup is of a lower physical level than the modern surround sound setup in terms of distance and height. But yeah, as you guys can see, looks pretty awesome in my opinion. So that's those. I'll be hooking those up today as well with this. So, next up, we have something that I've been really excited about, but we're going to put to one side for today. And that is my remote control S-Video switch. This is a pretty generic brand. You've probably never seen it before, but S-Video switches are so hard to come by, especially remote control ones. So this will be primarily to hook up the two N64s and the GameCube, and I'll build a remote between them all. And we'll be going directly into the TV with this phono cable for audio, and of course a really high quality S-Video cable that I have on the way. So straight into the TV with S-Video. Now that's everything that I received today. I'm just going to get a couple more things in the frame here that we're going to discuss, that we're going to put in the setup today. So this is the stuff that I had already, and hopefully if we get time we'll be setting this up today as well. So this is the Tacima. I'm not going to go through all this again. I spent far too much talking about it in the first day. Yeah, so 6 sockets for the rack. So pretty self-explanatory, power conditioner, all that good stuff. Next up, we have this. This is the SCART switch. Like I said previously, I can't remember if I've said it in this video, but I've said it in a previous video. This looks like your generic SCART switch that you'd see in any kind of like pound shop or any cheapo place that does cheap electronics, and they are absolute junk. But all of those are based off of this model, this Hama or Hama or whatever you call it. Is very highly reviewed. It's the most highest reviewed SCART switch under 50 quid, and I believe these are about 35 quid. You've just got to make sure that you're actually getting this one as opposed to one of the cheap ones. This is a true isolating SCART switch with RGB support. I do have 2 of them because I got kind of worried that they'd be discontinued, because some of this gear gets really difficult to find these days. So I've got 2 of them, and I was originally going to use 2 on the setup before incorporating the S-Video switch, but now I'll only be using 1, and I'll actually be using this SCART switch for the 2 VCRs that I have. Now, for those, for the VHS one, it's quite simple. I've got a relatively high quality SCART lead here that'll go from that into this SCART switch. But for the Beta VCR, it obviously doesn't have SCART. It's got BNC video out. So I have this cable, which is BNC video and stereo audio, to a nice SCART cable. Not 100% sure that I'm going to stick with this cable. It's not as high quality as I thought it was going to be, but it'll get me through for now. Now, the Beta VCR is only mono, so I'm going to need to put a phono splitter on the output, which I do have in my bag somewhere, I think, to get the audio at least into all of the speakers. But that's okay. That's a pretty common thing to do. And then to connect the SCART switch to the TV obviously has SCART inputs. I really hope that they are decent. This is a fairly old flat panel, so I'm imagining that the scaler will be okay. I just know SCART on some of the newer TVs, on the 1080p TVs and everything, just looks just god-awful. But hopefully it's okay. I do have one of these. This is something that you'd never ever ever see me buy. This is a monster cable. These cables are overhyped and overpriced by a long shot, but I got this one for free with another piece of equipment that I bought years and years ago. So the output of this SCART switch will be going to the TV with this. And this will carry, of course, from the VCR, the surround sound information as well, because it'll carry the stereo audio to the TV, and then it'll come out of the TV into the processor. So it's all fairly straightforward. Once it's all hooked up, it'll be really straightforward. But yeah, we're going to put this video stuff to one side for now and just focus on getting the audio wired up. So I'm going to pull out the rack, take off the cable duct, and we're going to start routing some cables. So at the back of this rack, we basically have these big cable management holes, and then this plastic duct gets screwed with 8 screws, believe it or not, onto the back of this stand, which is a bit inconvenient, but at least it hides all the cables. I prefer that than nothing. So I've taken that off, all the screws are there, and I'm basically going to start wiring up a few of these bits and bobs and showing you guys like things of interest along the way. So I know it looks like a massive mess right now, guys, but it is awesome progress. So first off, we have 6 mains plugs down here from all of the equipment. I wasn't sure that I had all the cables I needed. Luckily I do, so that's really great. That's mains all sorted. Obviously I haven't attached them to the Tacima extension lead yet, or plugged that in, but yeah, for the most part of the mains is there ready to go. That's an easy job. Then in terms of signal, I've actually connected everything. So we have the turntable connected to the amplifier, we have the output of the front speaker output of the surround processor going into the amplifier, into the auxiliary input. We have power, which is obviously hard power. Then down here we have the input coming from that long 5-meter lead that will eventually go to the TV, and the output going to the amplifier, as I previously mentioned. Down here on the video player we have SCART coming out, which is good. Down here on the Betamax we have video and audio coming out, and of course power. And then the N64 has got power and video and audio. So everything is really good. Now, a couple of things to mention. All of these cables are headed in this direction. This is from the N64 to go into the S-Video switch. These 2 SCARTs are to go into the SCART switch, and this is to go into the back of the TV. They will all sit there in a mess until I push the rack back and route it all behind the subwoofer over there. Then this is the last big messy cable. Unfortunately, this is my big long phono cable from my turntable. I don't have a shorter one of this quality, so I'm going to use that, but I'm going to make a tidy little stack and hopefully put the stack there or something. Lastly, when I'm wiring all of this up, I'll show you later when I'm done anyway, but I'm going to keep all of the mains cables separate from the signal cables. For the most part on the equipment, the mains cables are the correct side, so on the right, on the right, on the right, on the right, and on the N64 on the right. This guy is the only difference, and obviously a little bit early to follow standards with this guy. Late 70s, early 80s. So yeah, I'm going to get wiring up speaker cable now, because that's the only cables that I have left to do. Then I can push the rack back, of course, after Velcro tying all of this and putting the back on. So what I've done already, even though it's a lot, it was the easy part, because now it's time to do the hard part, and I don't have my wire strippers or anything, so I'm going to have to do this the hard way. But yeah, I'll get these wired up in hopefully a pretty quick time, because I really want to test this system out. Well guys, all 4 speakers are wired in, and because of the slightly higher quality speaker cable that I'm used to, it was a breeze with a pair of scissors and my teeth. I'm talking a bit quieter because little man's asleep upstairs, but what I decided to do was test all of this stuff before doing the cable management. So I've just pulled out the extension lead, plugged everything in, and I've had to use this green block plug thing on the wall to extend out the plug over the skirting board. But I'll get a proper extender soon so that Jess can use her USB thing. But yeah, let's try it out. Firstly, because I haven't connected the TV, I'm going to test out the turntable with nothing better than a bit of Simple Minds. So let's take a listen. Very quietly, of course, because little man is in bed. and no more than that, because if this video gets muted for copyright, I will not be happy. But yeah, we'll give it a proper test soon. So that's working. I'm going to test all the other stuff. So guys, I am over the moon to report that Dolby Surround through SCART is indeed working. I have it all hooked up down there, as you guys can see. Phono coming out of the TV, and everything is working perfectly. If I turn down the fronts, you can hear the surrounds working perfectly. Center coming out of the front, because I've got it on phantom center mode with the switch on the back, which basically sends the center to both speakers. And in terms of video quality, we're looking great. We're looking seriously great, guys. For VHS, I mean, I'm really, really, really pleased. Oh guys, yeah, this is awesome. Really pleased. So vinyl, lovely. VHS, lovely. Can't test N64. Don't have the S-Video hooked up. All that's left is Beta, so let me go and get a tape. Betamax is also looking great. I need to sort out my TV zoom settings, because right now it's either stretching or zooming, I can't really tell. But I'm not going to fiddle with the input settings of my TV until I've got everything hooked up. That's when I'm going to that's one good thing about this TV, it'll remember whatever you set it as. So my S-Video switch will be set to 4.3 as well as this input, and I'll have to have a look into how I'm going to achieve that. As you can see, we got a little bit of framing issue here at the moment, nothing major. Switching is working perfectly. If I just do that, it'll go back to VHS, and the surround sound is instantly recognised. Turn the fronts down, you can hear surround working perfectly, which is awesome. So yeah, I'm really, really happy with this, guys. I'm going to start cable managing and tidying up. So guys, just before I put the cover back on, I want to show you my wiring back here, because I am really proud of it. For the most part, the mains cables are kept totally separate. This is the mains stem, and as you can see, a new cable joins the stem from each shelf, and then of course this one is signal, which is a bit, you know, you got this loop which is the link between the amplifier and the surround sound processor, but all that's going to be behind the cover. So coming out the bottom then, in theory, we've got one lump which is going to be mains, and another lump which is signal. I'll tidy up all of this once the cover is back on. It'll be a lot easier. I've left plenty of cables on the N64 so that it can be pulled out and stuff if I want to. But yeah, time to put the cover on and see if it fits. So the back cover is on, as you guys can see, looking really, really clean, hiding all of that cabling. This cabling is coming on down here. I'm particularly proud of, hang on a second, let's see if I can move the rack a little around like that. I'm particularly proud of this little Y split I've got going here. It's basically the audio cables coming from the TV area and connecting with the rack, and then coming back out, as you guys can see, along here, which are the 4 surround speaker cables, which I'm going to eventually velcro all the way along, but I'm going to finish this lot first. One other thing, I've got all my power cables coming out velcroed there, as you guys can see. This looks like a mess, but what can you do? It's power cables. And then all I've got to contend with is this really long phono cable that I've got to wrap up neatly somewhere. So we're nearly there, folks. It's nearly time to push the rack back. Little view from the top, ignoring this lot. This is to come. But yeah, that is, in my opinion, neat. Considering there's no custom cable lengths and the amount of equipment here, I think that is looking really, really good. I'm really pleased with that. So yeah, I'm going to push it back, make it as neat as possible when I do so, and then I will show you how it's looking. Get in there, folks. Really get in there now. So all the cables at the back, nice and neat, or as neat as, you know, they can be. You can't see them anyway, so it's all good. Now, one big development. I was looking for a place for this, and I thought, if I have both of my switches in the same place, that'll be nice. I can keep all the cables tidy, and this will sit on top of the other one. So I pulled out the other one, thinking that it may fit in that little gap, and was absolutely shocked to see that it's about the same size as an actual Nintendo 64. And also, oh, it's plugged in so I can't show you, but you can see there. Also, this thing is really, really high quality. It's built out of metal. It's a solid feeling box. The text on the front is absolutely massive, so it's quite an ugly piece of kit. But around the back, as you guys can see, it's got everything we want. So S-video output with the left and right audio, as well as S-video input for every input, which is great. And also satellite auxiliary 1 and 2, which, yeah, I guess, oh, they're both inputs as well. It's 6 in, so you've got 4 S-video inputs, or composite, and two SCART inputs. So really, hang on a second. I could actually just use this switch. I've just realised that. I've literally just realised that. Although, doing so... Let me think. Yeah, I'll have to use this switch for now because I need to change the plug anyway. That's something I'll consider. But I would quite like to keep the VCRs running directly through SCART. Although it doesn't make much of a difference. We'll see. We'll see if I can notice any picture quality difference. But for now, I'm going to get this lot plugged in and try and tidy up the cables there in front of the gas meter, and then we'll see how far we get from there. So guys, I've tidied up the speaker cables going behind there, as you guys can see. I'm up to there. They will sit along there like that. Not perfect at the moment, but certainly getting there. And once I've finished, all of that excess will be behind the sofa. One thing, I've just been listening to some records, just testing the system out. Yeah, I'd forgotten how much my system really can kick. It's just a simple little basic amplifier and these Technics SB3030s, but I really, really enjoy the sound. So yeah, I'm going to play it safe for a few weeks, because it definitely is, man, the sound is going to travel, I think. We're a terrace, but they're thick, thick walls, so I really hope I can get away with some nice deep bass without upsetting any neighbours. It's not like we're going to be constantly playing loud music. I've already turned the subwoofer down for the surround setup in the settings because it was crazy. But yeah, I'm just going to finish off this last bit of wiring and then tidy up the living room, and I'll give you guys a little overview at the end here. So I'm just continuing to test the surround with VHS at the moment. I've tidied up, as you guys can see, and I've done all the cabling around the back here, so it's pretty neat. So yeah, I reckon this is it for part 1. I did mention I was going to talk about some problems I was having with the initial setup. I think that's due to my HDMI cable, yet again. I'm getting some weird lines across the screen sometimes when input switching. I hope it's not the splitter. If it continues, then I'll have to send it back and get another one. But I'll keep you updated on that in part 2. Part 2 is going to be a lot shorter because, as you guys know, the bulk of the setup is now done. But in part 2, you'll see everything a lot neater, you know, all this section all sorted out and everything, and you'll also see the integration with the other consoles and of course Apple TV, and we'll actually have internet by then, so you'll see it all networked and everything like that. So this is it for phase 1. Hope you guys have enjoyed this this video. Please leave your comments down below. Are you okay, little buddy? Yeah, excited? Yeah. Anyway, I hope you guys all enjoyed, and as always, I will see you in the next video, which may be a little while from now, as you guys know, moving, delays, internet connection, blah blah blah. Keep up to date with the vlog channel for more.